Hi, I'm Tony Vinciquerra, Chairman and CEO of Sony Pictures, and I'm here with Jason Stein of Cars and Culture.
Well, Cars and Culture has been in some unique locations. We've never had a recording space as special as this. On your lot inside the Rita Hayworth room. Tell me a little bit about the significance of where we're sitting and just what it means to you, I guess.
Well, this room, the Rita Hayworth, is the original commissary for the studio, which was MGM at one time. Now it's Columbia, obviously, Sony Pictures. But it's a very, very special room. It's a historic building. You can see the pictures around here of Rita Hayworth. We actually just renovated the room very recently during the pandemic. We renovated much of the lot. We took the time during the pandemic to fix everything that needed to be fixed, and there was a lot. It would have taken us 5 years. We got it done in 1.5 years.
Wow.
So it really worked out well. But this is a beautiful room, a beautiful lot, probably the nicest studio lot in California.
You're on 55 acres here, but there's a huge amount of history that just goes into the lot here. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it would be hours to tell you the history of the place, but you know, there's so many stories and so much history. The Wizard of Oz was shot here.
Wow.
The little guys in the film were all stayed at the Culver Hotel right down the street. Munchkins stayed down the street and apparently wrecked the hotel while they were staying there. There's so much has happened here, and impossible to go through it all. But most recently, we have a film out right now called Bullet Train, which was filmed here on the lot, which is a rare occurrence to do a film. Mostly TV is done here now. But Bullet Train was shot during the pandemic before vaccinations and got it done very, very well. And the film's actually in theaters right now and doing terrifically well.
Part of the show is culture in addition to cars, but you talk about the cultural significance of a place like this. You're forming culture, aren't you? And you are a bit of a custodian of culture.
Absolutely custodian of culture with our library of films and television shows. It goes back, you know, Norman Lear, we were just talking about a few moments ago. Norman Lear works here. He just turned 100 years old. He has 5 projects in the works.
Wow.
So there's a culture in and of himself. I mean, he's a driving force of what we do on the television side. On the film side, you know, there's so many things have been filmed and have happened here. And many films that we've done have helped to form the culture of America, as other studios have as well. So it's very exciting to be in a place like this that has such impact on the world and on the country that we live in. You
mentioned some of the restorations you were able to do during COVID. How else did you adapt during the pandemic?
Well, we didn't have people come to work office-wise for quite some time. In our productions, we put very, very significant protocols in place so that people could come to work and feel safe while they're doing their productions. And we built, the most important thing I think we did was we built a testing lab on the lot, and that afforded us the ability to test people every day and make sure that everyone was safe, and gave us a real leg up. We were the first to be in production on films in LA, and the first to be in production on television in Los Angeles as well.
What was your downtime?
I think we were down a few months, not much more than that.
Yeah, amazing when you think about the production sequence and what goes into making all of the projects that.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
Shooting a TV show or film is an extraordinarily complicated process, and how it gets done, I pray every day that it happens. But we have terrific people, great teams, great crews that figure it all out. And they did through the pandemic. They were just real champions in making sure everything happened well.
Going to the movies is a global phenomenon, and it's also a cultural phenomenon. But that changed during the pandemic, and you had to adapt. And how did you adapt?
Well, it stopped. Theaters were forced to close. As you know, the governments of various states and countries forced theaters to close so that to inhibit the spread of COVID. So we were still in production, had a lot of films in production, and got a lot of films done during COVID. We actually licensed a number of films to some of the streamers to keep them in process, and you know, that I think helped the world stay, you know, active and watching things and being able to entertain themselves while having to sit at home for a long, long time. And now films are back in. You know, we released last year in 2021, we released Spider-Man, did $1.9 billion, one of the biggest films of all time. Venom 2 did really well. Ghostbusters did really well. We have, as I mentioned, Bullet Train in theaters right now. We have Where the Crawdads Sing in theaters right now. And we just opened a film this weekend for anime fans that was #1 in the box office. We've had the #1 film 3 weeks in a row now in the box office, so pretty good response.
Incredible. So what we found is that although there was the benefit of being at home to enjoy entertainment, there's now the return.
Yep.
The return to the theaters.
Yep.
And en masse.
En masse, the issue right now is there are not enough films in theaters at the moment. There will be. Towards the end of the year, there'll be some very, very big films, and then next summer it comes roaring back in a very big way. You know, Top Gun is doing tremendous box office right now. It's a very good movie, very, very much a feel-good movie, and people came back to watch that. So, you know, we put good films out there, people will go see them.
Content, just proving to be the ultimate differentiator, even in a COVID or post-COVID world, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. What surprised you the most about what you learned during the pandemic, maybe what the studio learned?
What did we learn most during the pandemic? Well, we learned that we had really terrific people working here because they were able to adapt very quickly, particularly on the technology side, adapt very quickly to what was happening and getting our teams up and running. And they were able to keep the business going through the pandemic, working from home, sitting in their office or their cubbyhole or their kitchen or wherever they were, and kept the business going. But now it's time to get back to the office, get back to working in the office, because you know these are mentorship and apprenticeship businesses, and if you're not working with people that know what they're doing, you're not going to learn. You're not going to stay. You're not going to progress. So that's the next step. But we learned that we have very, very dedicated and ambitious people. So it was a good learning experience.
Will the hybrid of going to theaters and also watching at home remain as far as you can see it?
You mean streaming services?
Right.
Oh yeah, of course. It's you know, if you go back and you look at the evolution of media in general, you started with, you know, the tablets, the stone tablets where people were on it. But let's start with newspapers. When newspapers were the real way people shared information or got news, there were a lot of newspapers. And then radio came on and the talk was death of the newspaper. Then television came, it was the death of radio. Then cable television came, it was the death of television stations, and you know, well, it goes on and on and on. They just keep layering on, and now we have another way to entertain people. Theaters are going to be around, streamers will be around. There may not be as many. You know, we have many newspapers, now there's many fewer. You had many radio stations, there's fewer. You had many cable networks, that's starting to be fewer, and there will be eventually fewer streaming services, and possibly other means of entertainment go away, but they'll all be there to some degree.
You've had a long career. You started as a station manager in Boston at one point.
Well, I actually started as selling radio ad time in Albany, New York. That was my first job, but progressed from there.
Right,
Yeah.
but you get to a point where you've almost seen everything that's occurred in this industry, right?
Yeah,
Give me your perspective.
I've worked in every aspect of media, which is great because you know I've seen it all, and history does repeat itself. You know, whether you believe it or not, it all goes around. Business laws are immutable. People's attitudes and reactions are immutable. You can predict some of it. Of course, new technologies do bring a new wrinkle into it, but you can apply the old rules to the new media. There are certain things that have to happen. You have to make a profit. You have to have product that people want to see or hear or read. If you don't satisfy those 3 or 4 things, you're not going to be in business very long.
When you were described at one point, you were not a studio boss from Central Casting. Low-key executive with unflappable style and a lack of pretension in an industry known for big egos. Does that fit?
I think so, and I think that's partly why we've been, you know, pretty successful going through the years. That, you know, I'm here to help the people I work with do better, and here to make the company do better, not to really have myself in the press. And I don't do these kinds of things very often. I only did it because your friend Jay kind of twisted my arm to do it. but I'm here to do it and enjoying it.
Let's go back to your upbringing. Did you come from a car guy family? Was your dad a car guy?
He was kind of a car guy. My father was kind of a renaissance man. He didn't graduate from high school. He played professional baseball in the minor league team and then was drafted to go to World War II. His father died before he was born. He had 4 brothers and sisters. His mother didn't speak English. Lived in, 5 kids, and a mother lived in like a 3-bedroom apartment. And he was really, really good at everything he did. Before he died, he turned himself into an engineer and was inspecting nuclear power plants for the federal government. That was his last job. And but he was a mechanic. He loved to fix cars, really enjoyed fixing cars, and that's kind of how I got the bug.
What's your earliest memory of a vehicle in the family, or something that you were attracted to?
Well, we always had, I have 3 sisters and 2 parents, so we always had station wagons, so they weren't really that attractive. But but the first car I had when my mother and I bought a car together, a 1960 Falcon, Ford Falcon, with holes in the floor.
Floorboards.
Yeah, and it would almost make it up some hills. But that was my first memory of actually having a car.
You're an Albany kid, as
Yep.
you mentioned, and radio sales was
Yep.
the first foray. The media world was always attractive to you?
Not really. I never really considered that. I went to school at Albany State, which is in the city I grew up in, and I met this guy who was he was an advertising salesman for the ABC television station there, and he seemed to have a pretty good job. He seemed to go out to lunch a lot, go out to dinner a lot, and have a lot of fun in his job. So I said, that sounds kind of interesting. So he introduced me to his boss, and I actually took a job as a radio salesman halfway through my junior year and went to school at night for the rest of my degree, and that's how I got in. I never really focused on the business, but I got into it, and it was fun and enjoyable, and I was pretty good at it, so here we are.
And your first foray into TV was, as I mentioned, it was at that Boston station.
No,
right?
it was actually in Albany. I went to a TV station in Schenectady, which is right next to Albany, as a account executive, advertising salesperson. That was my first job.
And what pathway did you envision? How did you?
I didn't.
You didn't?
Didn't. It just kind of happened.
Okay.
Being in the right place at the right time and being lucky and fortunate, and just kind of happened.
What attracted you to the business as you went on?
Well, it was fun. As an advertising sales executive, you tried to help businesses improve their business by putting together a campaign for advertising for them, and I enjoyed that, and it was fairly simple to do if you broke it down, very much like what I do now. We try to find the simple path, not the easy path, but the simple path that you could get people to understand and set a strategy. And I set a strategy for how I wanted to sell advertising time, and that really was find companies that were growing. And I did that by looking in the newspaper and looking at the want ads and seeing who's growing. And then I'd go to those clients and help them advertise.
Prior to coming here, you had an experience at Fox that was fairly significant. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Well, I moved here in 2001, at the end of 2001, to run the Fox network, the Fox broadcast network. Peter Chernin, who was the head of Fox at the time, hired me to do that. And 6 months later, some things happened in the company. He asked me to take over the cable group as well, the cable television group, and Fox network included Fox Sports and the network, and the cable group included FX, National Geographic Channel, Speed Channel, a bunch of regional sports networks, and a whole bunch of other businesses, and then international channels as well. So I took those businesses over about 6 months later, and it became the driver of Fox at the time. By the time I left, there was about 60%, maybe a little more, of the profit of the Fox Corporation. We had Fox News Channel was not part of my responsibilities, but then you had Fox News Channel, Fox Television, and Fox Film Group, and I had the biggest part of the company.
So you mentioned Speed. So let's talk about the various iterations of Speed and what that meant to, particularly the car world here in North America. How it shaped things.
Well, Speed Channel was a terrific concept. It had already started it was a tiny channel when I got there, and took over leadership of it, and it was doing okay. But we had to expand the coverage of it. We put NASCAR racing on it. We brought Formula One here. we brought a lot of other car-centric businesses, including the Barrett-Jackson auction, which as a partnership, we grew Barrett-Jackson to where it is today on Speed Channel. And things changed over time. We had it for many years, and then they went and did other things, and we went and did other things. And Speed Channel, after I left Fox, it went away. They turned it into, I think, Fox Sports 2 or Fox Sports 1. I don't recall exactly which channel it was, but it was a very profitable channel, did very, very well. The NASCAR, that was the ascension of NASCAR as well, which, dealing with the France family was a great experience. Bill France Sr. was just a terrific man, and really enjoyed working with him.
And it was a confluence of events around that time because you had some superstars who were really emerging. You had Jeff Gordon coming onto the scene around that time, 2001, and it became a very competitive, and it became incredibly popular.
Right.
It was a stroke of genius. I mean, it was...
Well, again, the headline to my career, being in the right place at the right time.
But
in the Barrett-Jackson auction too, when we first put it on the air and really started growing, it was doing very significant ratings and grew their business tremendously.
It's hard to think now, Tony, that those properties wouldn't, and we'll get to Formula One in a moment, but that those properties wouldn't have had a true home or wouldn't have even been conceived at that point when you think about where we are today.
Yep, right.
The growth, the trajectory over the last 20 years has been fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Could you have envisioned that, or?
Well, we saw that NASCAR was growing very rapidly. It wasn't always the easiest negotiation with NASCAR, but we saw that it was growing, and we wanted to kind of hitch our ride to it, so to speak, and we did. And they did with us too, because it did. And we also put it on the Fox broadcast network. We put, the Saturday truck races and the other series, the various names of the series, on Speed Channel, and then on the broadcast network we would have Fox. We would have the major race on Sunday, and they just worked really, really well. And then, NASCAR decided they wanted to be a more metropolitan-based business and made some mistakes, and their popularity now has waned a bit, but still extraordinarily popular concept, NASCAR racing. If you go to one of the races, and if you've ever been to one,
of course,
you see the trailers and the RVs that just follow them around, and it's just the passion behind that business is so enormous.
They're moving cities
Exactly.
more than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah, with a fervor for drivers and winners and losers and protagonists. And
it's all about I'm number 8 or I'm number 3.
Right.
Dale Earnhardt number 3 was, people still wear his hat and his shirts and his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had Jeff Gordon on this program as well as Rick Hendrick, and Jeff talked about how they went to Madison Avenue. More than anything else, it was a complete transformation. For that whole group.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Rick Hendrick did enormous work for NASCAR and for Barrett-Jackson as well, because he's always at the auctions buying lots of cars.
You like the auction side of the business too, don't you? There have been reports of you being at auctions.
I've been at a lot of auctions.
Tell me about that.
Well, I'm very friendly with Steve Davis at Barrett-Jackson, who is the heart and soul of that business. I don't know if you know Steve, but he's just a terrific guy. And I know David Gooding very well. Our kids went to school together actually in LA, so I got to know David through the auctions and through there. It's just a lot of fun to go to the auctions and see the energy and the enthusiasm and the financial backing of people that go to these things. You just came from Monterey, where you saw a couple million dollar cars sell, I guess, right? So
20 million with one Ferrari.
Really? Wow, it's a very active business right now.
It is.
For sure.
It is. So you gave it a home. You gave Barrett-Jackson a home. And what was the concept behind creating a television marketplace for that?
Well, it was actually on Speed Channel when I got there, but it was not.
But you blew it up.
We blew it up
Right.
in a big way. The concept was it was doing very good ratings, and we thought it's always better to have good ratings than not good ratings. So we expanded the programming and put really, really talented people on the stage, around on the block to really position and promote the cars and talk about the cars. And we brought race car drivers in to talk about as correspondents really, that would go out in the line up where all the cars are coming and talk about the various cars, and it really worked well. Again, being on the ascendancy of a business is always a good thing.
So Formula One, so
Yep.
you gave Formula One almost the same kind of perch as well. I mean, Formula One, for those who think that it's all drive to survive and this excitement around these American events has been here forever. The truth is, it was hard to find on Sundays.
Yes.
Right?
Well, it was hard to find in the U.S. television marketplace because it was not always on. But the real problem was the races were on at different times around the world. The interesting thing is when we put it on Speed Channel, we saw that the races did 40,000 viewers no matter what time they were on, midnight, 3 a.m.,
Just a
6
passionate
p.m.
following.
Just an awesomely passionate following. And we focused a lot on it, but we could never really grow it to a really sustainable level because there weren't any races in the U.S. until the last couple of years. So I left Fox 11 years ago. So I didn't see the growth of it, but it was, going to an event was an event. I mean, they were just wildly popular events, and bringing races to the U.S. really has positioned the racing concept in a very, very aggressive way. The Miami race, I don't know if you went to the Miami race.
No, I wasn't there.
Everybody I talked to went to that race.
Yes, they did. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't go, but everybody I knew went to that race.
Yeah, Miami, and now the fervor around Las Vegas, and of course Austin, which has now already been established now.
And we're talking about New York now too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And there's it's been fascinating to see that kind of passion. Do you attribute it to, given the fact that there are no American drivers, do you attribute it to what Netflix did?
Well, a piece of it, but the ownership of the Formula One is now an American company. It's owned by Liberty Media.
Liberty Media, right.
And they're an American company, and they're focused on it. They know how to market, and they know how to build these businesses. So, you could argue that it wasn't really run as a business in the past. It was run as kind of a hobby. The Ecclestone sold it to a private equity company in Europe, so it was still Eurocentric. It's owned by an American company now.
Right.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. Plus, the Netflix Drive to Survive has helped it somewhat, for sure.
And Stefano Domenicali said on this program that they would kind of come to, when the races were in America, they would come to America and they would leave, and there would be no further connection with the American public.
Right.
But now there's a sustained voice that's here in the marketplace.
Because it's an American, owned by an American company now, which is a big difference.
Right.
And the Netflix piece, obviously.
You a car guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You drive a Lucid.
I have a car dealership that I started when I left Fox in 2011 called Sophie's Garage, named after my daughter, who is a very big car fan. So I've bought and sold dozens of cars over the years.
Tell me about Sophie's Garage.
It's just a small online dealership that I'll buy. Well, I'm not actively working it right now because I have a day job, so it's a little difficult. But in the 6 years between working at Fox and coming to Sony, I worked it pretty aggressively. I had 8 or 10 cars at a time, and would find things that I thought would appreciate and hopefully sell at a profit. And did okay. Didn't make a lot of money, but had a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun with it. And the dealership is still active, and at some point I'll go back to it again.
It's great to be a car dealer in America.
It really is. It really is. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I've had dozens of cars that I've gotten to drive and spend some time with, and revitalize dead batteries and all the things that go along with having a bunch of cars sitting around. I had a hangar at the Santa Monica Airport right next door to Jerry Seinfeld's.
Okay.
Right down the street from Jerry Seinfeld's, who, ironically, we'd sell Jerry show, and we're just with him a couple of weeks ago, actually. He has an amazing, I don't know if you've seen what he has
Amazing
here.
Porsche. We've seen him at Pebble Beach in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been a frequent
Was he there
guest
Saturday?
We didn't see him, but he has been there, and
Yeah.
his Porsche collection is legendary. And of course, the recent Jay Leno appearance in a Porsche was also one to remember too.
Yeah. Jay, we on Sundays, myself and Jay Leno and Skip Firestone and Jerry Seinfeld, Jerry and Skip were filming a movie here, and we'd all get together on a Sunday morning for coffee occasionally. So it was always a lot of fun.
Cars and Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld.
Cars and Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno, who is, encyclopedic knowledge of cars.
We have had him on the show as well, and
Yeah.
we toured his garage.
Yeah, you mention a car to him, he'll tell you all about the history of it,
Phenomenal.
the problems with it, what the weak points were, what the strong points are.
So you're hanging with car guys on the weekends.
Occasionally, yeah, not always, but occasionally, yeah.
That's a special Cars and Coffee group.
That's one of the reasons I bought the Lucid. He said it was a great car. And,
Yeah.
You know.
What else do you have in your stable of vehicles?
Well, right now I don't have a lot. I have the Lucid. I have my favorite car, I have to say, is Chevy Volt. I've had 3 of them now, and it's so sad that they stopped manufacturing them because they're terrific cars. But I do understand that it cost them more to make them than they sold them for. So
Right, right.
But they're just great
You
cars.
can appreciate that
Yeah,
consideration.
I do appreciate that. But they're just great cars. I have sitting one out here. I drive it to work every day.
Yeah.
And I'm sad that I can't buy another one because this one's 3 years old now, 4 years old now. And I have the Lucid Air, my number 123, I think,
Okay.
of the Lucid Airs.
It's a total screamer.
It is very fast.
You can't hear it, but it's a screamer.
It, is,
Right.
It goes very fast. It feels like it's going to do a wheelie if you hit the accelerator too hard. And then I drive an old G-Wagon occasionally too.
Wonderful.
So, but I'm waiting on a Z06 right now. I have my order in.
Right.
And waiting on that. So.
Right. Well, another heck of a great ride.
Yeah.
You knew Carroll Shelby, right?
Yes,
the legendary
very well.
Carroll Shelby.
Very well.
Tell
yes.
me about him.
Carroll, boy, I knew Carroll. I think Carroll died in 2012 or so. I knew him for about 10 or 12 years before that. We would have lunch at Bel Air Country Club, where he held court a lot, and I'd have lunch with him quite a bit there. And he was just a very entertaining guy. And I've owned and driven most of his cars, including a Series 1.
Wow.
I had a legendary car. I'll tell you a story about that in a moment. But my favorite of his cars was I had a 68 500 GT500 convertible, marina blue with a white top, which is a beautiful car and lovely car, and it goes straight really, really well. It doesn't turn or stop so well. And Carroll was fine with that, by the way. He said, I just have to get them go fast. I don't care if they go around the corner or not. But
he loves straight line acceleration.
He does love it. He loves straight line horsepower.
Yeah.
That was it. But the Series 1 was really the only car he built from the ground up. And it had that Oldsmobile engine in it, the 6-cylinder engine. And he made a few cars with a supercharger in it. The original, the non-supercharged engine was about 400 horsepower, so he had it tuned up pretty well. The supercharger was more. And when I mentioned to him I had this car, he said, I bought it at a Barrett-Jackson auction, as a matter of fact. When I mentioned to him that I had this car, he said, let me have it. I want to put a supercharger on. I have all these parts left over from when I was building the car at his, he had this facility down in Carson. And I said, how long will it take? He said, I'll be quick. All the parts are there. So it takes I bring the car down. And this warehouse he had was stocked with amazing cars. Lots of Cobras, everything you could imagine, some Woodies. I mean, probably 100 cars in the place, just amazing, amazing cars. So I dropped the car off to the mechanic that he says is going to do this, and he says, okay, fine, takes the car. So about a month later, I called Carroll. Hey, Carroll, how's the car going? He says, oh, let me check with, I think the guy's name was Joe. Let me check with Joe, see how it's going. And he says, oh, he's still working on it. So another month goes by, 6 months or now have gone by. And I go down to see Joe. I said, how's it going? And he said, we have to fabricate every part that we're putting into this because there were no parts left over. I said, well, Carroll told me he had all these parts left over. So it took him like 8 months to do the thing. I have a picture of Carroll and myself in front of the car. I can show you.
Wonderful.
At some point. But finally, the car is done. So I go to pick it up, and it's a rainy day, and the car now has like 700 horsepower, and it weighs about, 2,200 pounds. And it was scary to drive.
How'd you get it home?
It was scary to drive.
Carroll was a character.
Yeah, that's for sure. I sold it out of Barrett-Jackson action.
You did, yeah. Cars and movies, cars and TV.
Yep.
The cultural impact of all of that. I mean, you can think. I can think of American Graffiti
Right,
and just that 50s scene with all of the classic vehicles that were part of it, or Back to the Future with the DeLorean,
right.
or Christine,
Dukes of Hazzard,
or Dukes of Hazzard,
yeah.
and
Sold a lot of
TV
those
world.
Chargers.
Right.
We're in the process of getting a film started right now based on the Gran Turismo PlayStation game, which we're going to start shooting in Eastern Europe, and it's going to go around the world to a bunch of different tracks. And it's based on I don't know if you know this, but they do a contest every year where people qualify. They race on their setups, on their rigs in their homes using the game. And the concept of the film is that it's about a kid who won the race I think it's in the early 90s, or the early 2000s, excuse me. And he actually gets a chance to go to a real race car, a Nissan, whatever that class of cars that they're using. And it's about him, being in his basement and being, looked at as kind of a nerd, and he gets to go drive a race car, and his team won their class in Le Mans. So that's what the film's about. It's about somebody who plays the PlayStation game and wins the contest and moves on.
And so much of the energy around young drivers originates.
Yeah, I think
in
about
the Gran Turismo series.
I think about 100,000 people participate in this contest.
Wow.
Every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the genesis of this,
well, PlayStation is a Sony
right.
Sony product, so
you thought, well, we can extend the brand.
Exactly. Well, one of the things we've done here at Sony is Sony Pictures has created a relationship with the PlayStation Group. We now have about 10 projects in the works using PlayStation intellectual property. The first of which was Uncharted, which came out early in the year, did $400+ million in box office. And this will be, I think, our third or fourth project.
Yeah, you did something with HBO also called The Last of Us.
Last of Us, it's in process right now, yeah.
Yeah, and a bunch of other related things.
Yes.
So there's a ton of opportunity here to reach a whole new audience as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Twisted Metal is another one we're doing. There's like I said, there's 10 or 12 projects in the works.
Fantastic. How about just car culture in general as it relates to the TV industry? As vehicles increasingly go electric or autonomous, I've got to believe, Tony, that there's going to be a place, there will always be a place in film or TV to have the car as a centerpiece of a storyline.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. There's always a chase scene.
It might be an autonomous chase scene.
It might be a very quiet chase
Right.
scene, but there will be a chase scene. And that'll be interesting. You mentioned autonomous chase scene. It'll be interesting to have one of those, somebody just sitting in the back of the car being in a high-speed chase scene.
Right.
I'm sure you'll be seeing that at some point soon.
When you think about where this industry is going to go moving forward, whether it's content creation or content distribution, players like Amazon coming into the mix now, or some of the other distribution outlets that we talked about earlier, streaming, where does the film and TV industry go? What's the next turn around the bend in general?
Well, I think it's a pretty exciting future when you have more places to sell your product to. We took a little different tack than most of our competitors 5 or 6 years ago, and we call ourselves the arms dealer, where we sell to everybody, as opposed to most of our competitors who take all their product and put it on their streaming service. So we've been just on a tremendous roll. We've had 4 record years in a row. Last year, our fiscal year ended plus 200% in operating profit, and our first quarter this year was up 70% on top of the 200%. So we're doing as well as we could expect. But now that there's so many different platforms to work with, and we've also established a couple of our own subscription video services, one of which is called Crunchyroll. It's an anime service. We have 10 million subscribers to that service. And we have a faith and family business called PureFlix, which we have about 1 million subscribers, and those are both growing at a very rapid rate. But they're very focused on a particular audience as opposed to being general entertainment. So we at Sony Pictures are in a very, very good place right now. And I think the business itself is in a good place once it has its little shakeout of having too many subscription services and people understand. There's been a lot of experimentation, I guess, is the way to describe it.
And a lot of subscription services.
And a lot of subscription services, which there won't be as many in a couple of years, 4 or 5 years. But there's been a tremendous amount of experimentation as to what works, what's the best way to release films with the combination of streaming and theatrical. And we're mostly focused on theatrical, but we do have some deals to produce directly for the streamers as well. So we have more places to go. We have the ability to make many more films than we can release theatrically. So this is actually really very good for us.
Wow. What's the future of, I'll just say it, the good old-fashioned television channels?
Again, same
networks?
thing. Networks are in a decline, obviously.
Yeah.
Broadcast networks and cable networks are in a period of decline right now, but they're not going to zero. Most television shows have reduced their audience dramatically over the past 10 years, let's say. But we have 2 shows here, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, which actually are up in ratings, ironically. So, you know, we're very happy with that.
What do you make of that?
Well, they're kind of, well, through the pandemic, they were a very safe place to be. People know they were going to be on. They know they were going to be on the very specific time. Everyone was locked in their house, so they used that as those shows and news, you know, local news as kind of the core that they set their day by. And I think you have to give credit for the producers of those shows. They've done a really good job of updating them and modernizing them and doing things with them that have accommodated them to how the audience has changed. So I don't know exactly what's causing it, but it has to do with some of those things we just discussed, and it's working really, really well for us right now.
And game shows in general, I mean, they date back, you know, what, 60, 70 years,
Absolutely.
right?
With a game show network as well,
Right.
which is also doing well. And one of the keys to the success of those, in addition to people wanting to watch them, people watch them live. They watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy live, so there's no recording of the show. So they're watching the commercials as well. So advertisers look at that as obviously a tremendous positive because they're not being recorded and people stream through the commercials.
Sure, sure. You were part of Fox and Fox Sports with Super Bowls also.
Oh yeah, went to a lot of Super Bowls.
The appeal still of the Super Bowl as or even live sports in general, it seems to be the last place where networks can still succeed on live TV.
Well, yes, but game shows, you'll see a lot more game shows on broadcast networks now. We have one on right now on ABC, $100,000 Pyramid,
Right.
which is hosted by Michael Strahan. So it's a combination of sports and game show. Michael was a linebacker for the Giants, of course.
Yes.
So
And a big car guy.
And a big car guy. In fact, he just got the Hummer, and he's very excited about the crab walk. I think. Yeah.
I heard.
Yeah. So we, you know, we have a lot of game shows. We have the biggest library of game shows, I think, in the business, and we've been putting those out, and they're very successful for us.
Yeah. And the Super Bowl as an entity?
Well, sports itself, you have to say, if there weren't NFL on the broadcast networks, they'd be in a lot more trouble than they are. People watch it live. Again, the commercials are watched live, so advertisers are willing to pay a very high price for those commercials. And the Super Bowl still is getting 100 million viewers every year, in addition to all the other places you can watch or get updates on the game. In fact, my son, who's 12 and is a football savant, we watched 2 games yesterday. Not the best games because they're all second and third stringers,
right.
but he wanted to watch. We did our fantasy leagues yesterday. So, yeah.
Let's get back to cars for a minute.
Yeah.
The kind of cars that you've driven. Let's talk about that.
I've through my dealership and through the ownership of cars, I've driven just about everything there is, from a '54 Packard Caribbean to the Porsche Taycan to my favorite car was the BMW Z8, which I had, which is a terrific car.
Yeah,
I sold it because I don't know if you remember the car. It has a pointed front, and twice people backed into it and crunched it. So whenever you park it, it's always in danger because you can't really see it. So I sold it too soon. It's probably appreciated 3 times to what. It's a great car. It's a great car. And then the other of my favorites was I told you about the 500 GT, which is great to drive straight. But I've had 3 Audi R8s.
Oh, wonderful.
2 Spiders and 1 coupe, and one was a 6-speed. And then I had a Ferrari. Another one that I really liked was a Ferrari F430 in the kind of darkish blue with beige seats with a 6-speed, which is very rare. A lot of fun to drive.
Wow.
A lot of fun to drive.
The sound of that vehicle
Yeah, it was great.
around the
It was
canyons
a
of LA.
It was a Spider too, so
Oh,
it was a lot. It was a
wonderful.
lot of fun. A lot of fun. But I've had, tremendous number of cars that have been fun. I had a '57 Thunderbird, 67, couple 67 Corvettes. I've run the range of just about everything you could have.
Anything you want going forward that you
Well,
don't have?
really excited about the Z06.
Yeah.
I think that GM has done such a great job with the Corvette, and I think this
Boy, it's
iteration
beautiful.
will be terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be mistaken easily for Ferraris.
Or McLaren. It looks a lot like a McLaren.
It does look
for
like
sure.
a McLaren.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Z06 and what's the dream car? I know you have that on order, but what's the
Yeah.
dream car?
I don't know that I have a dream car right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you excited about electric cars?
I am. I've
Yeah,
had
beyond the Lucid, but
Well, I have a Volt, as I said,
Right.
and the Lucid, and I think if this isn't a dream, it's something I'd like to get is one of the electric pickup trucks. I'm not sure which one yet, because you can't really find them. They're all
Right.
in such great demand, but we'll see how that works.
Yeah. Anything that you have coming up at the studio that you want to tell us about that's
Well,
that we should get excited about for next year?
I think Gran Turismo is one
Yeah.
people should watch, because the film is going to be very, very good. We have a terrific director who is putting it together, and Nissan is participating. And the Nissan were the cars that are in the series that the kid that won the tournament went to drive. So that adds tremendous value to the property. And then we have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, our animated film, coming out next year, and we have a lot of really good stuff coming.
Well, I'm
really
sure
excited
you
about it.
always have a lot of good stuff,
Yeah.
and we anxiously await the next either TV production or movie production.
I think on the TV side, your audience probably would really like to see The Boys, which is on Amazon. It's a series that's really terrific. Not for the faint of heart, let me put that out there, but it's doing it really, really well. And then Cobra Kai, which is ours as well. And probably not a lot of people who are watching The Crown, but in your audience, but also a very nice show that a lot of people enjoy watching.
Before we let you go,
Yeah.
I mentioned Drive to Survive earlier.
Yep.
Tell me your thoughts on the development of that and how that changed the game when it came to behind-the-scenes sports activities. Because Formula One was very closed off, and they pulled the curtain back with this series.
Well, the producers of the show did a fabulous job with it. I don't know that it was that original a concept, though. With NASCAR, we did a lot of that stuff on Speed Channel and Fox. But it's a very different approach and very different time. And the producers just did so much better a job than we ever did with the NASCAR part. But they packaged it really, really well. Made it human. Made it about people as opposed to cars.
Yeah, and the content, and go again back to that NASCAR theory of the protagonist, that somebody who you're really fighting for,
Right.
or the storyline that you want to try
Right.
to follow.
Although they never really made a bad guy, a black hat in the Formula One series.
Yeah.
But
it was just the teams
but it
that
was
couldn't compete with
exactly,
the bigger teams.
Exactly,
Right.
right. That's for sure.
The Haas teams.
The Haas teams. That became very clear.
So much empathy for the Haas team.
Yeah, exactly.
Throughout all of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And where can that go? Can that be extended to other sports programs, do you think?
Sure, I think it can. In fact, I can't talk about them, but we're working on a few concepts that go to other sports. We have a very big business in India where cricket is the primary sport. And interestingly enough, the second ranked sport in India, do you have any idea what it might be? World Wrestling.
Oh.
Which we air on our channels there. So we're looking at around the world in various different ways to do similar things with sports concepts.
Amazing. What a journey you've had from Albany and selling radio to now talking about these concepts.
Again, being in the right place at the right time and being very fortunate.
Well, we're in the right place with you here. So
Great.
Thank you so much, Tony.
My pleasure.
Very, very much appreciated.
Nice to see you.
Tony, thank you.
Thank you.
The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein,
former publisher of Automotive News,
is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on Sirius XM Business Radio.